All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Misconceptions of Islam. My name is Rani Badran, and I am the president of the Muslim Students Association. Oh, let me share screen. That would be good, so you can know what I'm about to talk about. All right. Before we get into our intro to Islam and the misconceptions, I would like to take a moment to remember and honor the lives lost in Christchurch, New Zealand mosque shooting that occurred on March 15, 2019, exactly 2 years ago. The shooting occurred at El Nur Mosque during the Friday prayer. Friday is the holy day for Islam, as Saturday is for Judaism and Sunday is for Christianity. The terrorist who opened fire on the Muslims that day had written a manifesto where he stated that he wanted to show the invaders that our lands will never be their lands, our homelands are our own, and that as long as a white man still lives, they will never conquer our lands. So I want to take a moment to honor the lives lost. There were 51 victims that day. More were injured, but 51 unfortunately lost their lives. The victims were men, women, and children. The youngest of the victims was 3 years old, and the oldest was 77 years old. And I'm going to show us a video from about a week after the shooting occurred, where they held a Friday prayer right outside the mosque in the park across the street from the mosque. So you can see how the response was in New Zealand, how the people gathered, and part of their burials. So let me know if you can hear it.
I'm here in Hagley Park, in the heart of Christchurch, just across the road from the mosque where a gunman opened fire and killed Muslim worshippers a week ago. It has shaken the core of the Muslim community here in New Zealand, but today hundreds have come out to pray, a week on, for the first Friday sermon. And the public in New Zealand has come out today to support them and to welcome them. Across the road from Al Nur Mosque, Muslims gathered in public for the first time since the terror attack shook their community to its core. Thousands of New Zealanders stood behind them, a show of solidarity and a promise of safety. It began with a call to prayer, broadcasted here in the park and on national television and radio.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
There was a moment of silence to reflect. Their Imam, a survivor who saw the attack firsthand, led the Friday sermon with a message to the country and the world.
Islamophobia is real. It's a targeted campaign to influence people to dehumanize and irrationally fear Muslims. Today, I look out and I see the love and compassion in the eyes of thousands of fellow New Zealanders and human beings from across the globe.
And then they prayed together.
I've been wanting to kiss the ground because this is the only land in the whole world that accepted us after we were kicked out of Kuwait, first Gulf War. So when I came here, I realized that he didn't just shoot 50, he shot nearly 5 million Kiwis.
Answering a call from the community, hundreds of women wore the Islamic headscarf, a gesture in support of their fellow Muslim neighbours.
Well, we were invited to do that as a show of support and solidarity, and it's an honour to wear it today. Yeah.
It's a sad day, but it's also a day which everyone's got together and just showed their support. So it's amazing how everyone's just there for each other.
It was a day full of emotion. For the Muslim community, it was both painful and healing.
We're feeling quite overwhelmed. It's quite an emotional experience seeing all the families of the victims all in the same space. And as we were listening to the khutbah and the prayers, there was a lot of tears.
Dawood Nabi was killed in the attack, but quickly became a symbol for those who lost their lives. His final words to the shooter, "Hello, brother," resounded around the world. Today, his son says he is filled with joy.
No, my father's here. He's smiling and He's got the biggest smile in the world because we just united everybody.
What we saw happening in Hagley Park here in Christchurch today was rare. Hundreds of Muslims praying openly, surrounded by thousands of supporters. But it's indicative of the heart and soul of this country, of this open wound that is trying to heal. And the message that was sent out today was loud and clear, that this country will emerge from this tragic event stronger, more powerful, and more united than ever before.
All right, so now I just want to take a moment of silence to honor the victims, and this is the list of names of the victims from that day. All right. Now, a little bit about Islam. A person who practices Islam is called a Muslim. Muslims base their faith on the teachings found in the Quran, which is the holy book, and also on Hadith, which are the traditions and the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. The two most familiar denominations in Islam are Sunni Muslims and Shia Muslims, and Muslims pray 5 times a day. Ramadan is the holiest month for Muslims, and Ramadan is a month of fasting. Muslims fast from dawn sunrise to sunset. Muslims don't eat, drink, or smoke during these hours. There are 5 pillars in Islam that are considered to be obligatory for all Muslims to follow. First, we have the Shahada, which is the profession of faith. Then we have Salah, which is the prayer 5 times a day, every day. Sawm and fasting is just fasting during the month of Ramadan. And Ramadan follows a lunar calendar. So this year, the month of fasting will actually be beginning in the middle of April. And be on the lookout because the MSA will be holding a lyceum in the middle of April called Ramadan Kareem for you to learn even more about Ramadan, and we'll be fasting during it. Zakat is the almsgiving. A certain percentage of your income is to be donated every year. And then Hajj, which is our annual pilgrimage to Mecca, and that is you're asked to perform it at least once if you have the money for it and if your health is able to withstand it. And as I stated earlier, Islam follows a lunar calendar, and Ramadan is our holy month of fasting, but we also have 2 other official holidays in Islam, Eid al-Fitr, which is celebrated right at the end of Ramadan, and Eid al-Adha, which is celebrated at the end of Hajj, the pilgrimage. And so this year, Eid al-Fitr will be in the middle of May, and Eid al-Adha will be in the middle of the summer.
I'm not sure I understand.
Okay. Dr. Rawson.
Yeah, absolutely. So you guys, I want to jump in. Rania asked me, I'm one of the faculty advisors for the Muslim Student Association, and something that I wasn't taught when I was younger, growing up Christian, is just the family ties between Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. So what I want to do tonight, just maybe to dispel some of the mystery and some misconceptions, right, around the connection between Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, is to actually talk about how intimate our ties are. So we all have, within these 3 Abrahamic faith traditions, the same ancestor, right? The same patriarch, right? As you know, these are patriarchal traditions. While each of them has made great strides, right, to move beyond patriarchy, right, we do have one common ancestor that is Abraham. In Islam, right, Ibrahim. So an interesting story here we find in Genesis 12. Abraham is called from his homeland. He's actually an immigrant that is called by God to go to what we now, if we've been raised Christian, know to be the promised land. And in fact, then, and for much of history, it was called Palestine, right? This is also the same word in Arabic, Philistine, that we know. For those of us who are familiar with the Hebrew Bible, right, we hear about the big bad Philistines. That word, in fact, when translated now, typically means someone who's uncultured, but that's a whole other conversation that in fact has contributed to Islamophobia and misconceptions about Muslims and Palestinian Muslims, to be exact. So here's the deal with this story, right? So Abraham's called to go to the promised land, right? According to the story in the Bible, Abraham is going to be given this land by God, not his land. Again, he's an immigrant, really important. In fact, that's a huge theme in Genesis. Abraham and all his people were strangers. They were aliens, right? They were immigrants in this place. And that word, that theme, as my students know, is repeated throughout Genesis. So here's the deal. He's married to Sarah. This was a time when polygamy, right, was the practice, right? So men could marry as many or have as many wives as they wanted, concubines, whatever. So Abraham marries Sarah. We hear about this as his only wife, though he had many, right? Sarah seems to be the focus in this story. And Sarah, right, like many women back then, in fact, all of them, right, her value was according to the man that she was in a relationship with and to her children, if she could have male offspring, right? That's how her value was judged. Well, Sarah, right, a common theme also, for those of you who know the Hebrew Bible or the Old Testament, Sarah was barren, right? And so often what happens is women back then, right, as the stories are told in the Hebrew Bible, were barren so that God's power could be revealed. But what happens is Sarah doesn't trust God, according to the story, and she tells Abraham, right, who is given a promise by God, you will have this land, this promised land, and you will have as many children as there are stars in the sky. You will become a great nation, right? But in order to become a great nation and to have as many children as there are stars in the sky, you actually have to at least be able to have one to begin with, right? And you need to have a woman who can actually have children. Well, Sarah being barren, she decides that Abraham should instead then have a child with Hagar, their African slave. So she's an enslaved woman. Abraham then has sex with her and he has a child. His firstborn child, in fact, then is through his relationship with their African slave, and her son's name is Ishmael. Ishmael is his firstborn child, and God, right, who has blessed Abraham with this promise of being made a great nation, right, being given this land, right, this blessing then goes through Hagar into Ishmael, right, Abraham's firstborn. Interestingly, right, the plot thickens. Sarah becomes pregnant now, and she has a son, Isaac, right? So Isaac now, according to the story in the Bible, is given that blessing, right? To be the son of Abraham, to be given this land. And then Isaac marries Rebekah, right? And then they have Jacob and Esau. Now, what's interesting about what happens at this point, right, is that Jacob is named Israel, representing the side of Israel, and they have a son also named Esau, who in fact is this firstborn, just like Ishmael. But according to this story, it's not the firstborn who gets the blessing. As the Bible tells it, it's in fact the second child, interestingly, right? So as the Bible tells the story, then the way that the story is represented, of course, right, is that only this side of the family lineage gets the blessing. However, through Abraham, in fact, all of his ancestors should get the blessing. In fact, the land should be shared among this entire family. So interestingly, as I was growing up, I was led to believe that only the side of Sarah, Isaac, and Jacob, Israel, was the side that received the blessing of the land, the promised land, Palestine, what we know to be Israel as well today. But if you actually read the Bible truly, and also if you are able to learn more about Islam and the Quran, then what you realize is, in fact, through this family, everyone is blessed, right? We are all members of the same family. And therefore, rather than the land being fought over and, right, it being a contentious, antagonistic relationship, in fact, right, it should be shared equally among the family. And it's interesting the way that the text has been interpreted and reinterpreted so as to present this relationship as being a relationship in which these two sides of the family are enemies, right? On the one, we have Judaism and later Christianity. On the other, we have Islam, because in reality, we are much more similar than we are different.
Thanks, Dr. Rawson. So now, before we get into our little activity that we have, I want to talk about something that is very important, especially today, in light of the Christchurch shooting, and that is, what is Islamophobia? So Islamophobia is the fear, hatred, and hostility towards Islam and Muslims. Islamophobia can be done by anyone, our neighbors, our friends, teachers, community members. Some examples would be a teacher in Charlotte choked a 5-year-old Muslim boy in school. And in 2017, there was a mosque bombing in Minnesota. But Islamophobia can also be structural. Now, when I say it's structural, that is when the fear of Muslims is manifested and enforced through the enactment and advancement of laws, policy, and programming built upon the presumption that Muslim identity is associated with a national security threat. This is when we see laws and acts such as the Patriot Act of 2001, which tapped into Muslims' phones, countering violent extremism, which has gone into majority Muslim neighborhoods to try and identify Muslims who might be part of some extremism activities. And then the most recent, the Muslim ban, where Muslims were blocked from entering the country altogether. And it's because of structural Islamophobia that we started to see more instances of the micro and macro aggressions toward Muslims. This is why we have had things like the shooting in New Zealand 2 years ago and the murders of 3 Muslim students in Chapel Hill by their neighbor. So it's important to remember that Islamophobia can be done by anyone at any time. And when I say something is a microaggression, Dr. Rawson, you might want to help me expand on this, but that is when you get the smaller comments, like this one's a big one that I can think of right now off the top of my head, but when someone says, I don't eat pork, but every time someone asks me why I don't eat pork, they always assume I'm Muslim. Like, I ain't no Muslim. That's not appropriate. That's rude. What's wrong with being Muslim? There's nothing wrong with that. And then a macroaggression is instances such as New Zealand's Christchurch shooting and the attack on the 3 Muslim students in Chapel Hill. Dr. Rawson, did you want to expand on anything I said to help me explain?
No, I mean, I think you did a great job. I think it's just important to understand, right, that that microaggressions are those hostile comments, right, or behaviors that often go unquestioned, and sometimes they're inadvertent, right? We don't even realize, because we've grown up in a culture, and especially those of you who were born after 2001, right after 9/11. The Islamophobia, I think, heightened after that happened, right? And so it becomes really, really important to think about the ways in which our culture has become increasingly more Islamophobic and xenophobic, but specifically, right, that understandings of and misconceptions of Islam and Muslims, right, have been much more diffuse. They've been a lot more prevalent, because what happens is that when we see an aberration, right, a group of people, and I know, Rania, you're going to be going more into depth with this, and so I don't want to take too much time, but we see this aberration in 9/11, right? So like 0.0000000000000, I could keep going on, 1 Muslims would be in some way do violence, right? Like with 9/11, right? With the Twin Towers and with the Pentagon, right? What happens is that one act, right, is then becomes a stereotype for an entire group of people, right? Because we have limited knowledge of those groups of people, we tend to believe what the media sensationalizes, rather than actually, because not many of us growing up in the rural South, and especially if you grew up Christian when we're a predominantly white Christian university, for instance, right? We don't have the opportunity to interact with real live Muslim people. And so what's important about events like this, right, is that we have an opportunity to learn more, gain more information, hear more stories, right? Think about this in a more critical way. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I didn't mention this earlier, but the word Islam means submission to the will of God. And the word salam means peace. So when a Muslim will greet you, or if you look at the MSA emails, we always start with salam, peace. And so small details like that are always misconstrued in the media, and it's important that we deconstruct that. So now we're gonna get into our little activity. And so I have, that's not, okay. We're gonna be doing a poll everywhere. And so we're gonna ask you guys questions, and we get to watch your results pop in and learn a little bit. So you can go ahead and text or respond online at, if you're gonna text, do RBADRAN 633 to the number 22333. Or you can do pollev.com/ the same numbers and letters. It's always fun to watch.
Well, and is it like, are people changing their mind, or like?
Okay, I think we're gonna stop there. That's good enough. 79% say true and 21% say false. So the answer is true. A report by the Pew Research Center says that Islam is the world's fastest growing religion. Islam has about 1.6 billion followers, and the large youth demographic is among the reasons why the number of Muslims is projected to grow faster than the world's overall population.
Rania, can I give an example of a microaggression here? So often these are sort of like daily commonplace comments, right, that can be made. And so an example of a microaggression, right, that was used at our bias action team Lyceum last week would be someone saying, wow, the number of Muslims on campus is growing and it scares me, right? So what we have to do when we hear comments like that, right, is to get behind the thinking, right? And so obviously this person, right, in expressing this statement has some sort of fear, right, around this. And so today, right, we're gonna think about what's the fear behind that. Right, what is it about someone who is Muslim, or there being more Muslims on campus, that scares an individual, right? Why exactly? And often what we find is that has more to do, again, with stereotypes, like ideas that we have that we've generalized to an entire population without having any real life experience with actual Muslims, right? Go ahead, Anya.
And with that example that you gave, a Muslim doesn't have to be in the room for it to still be a microaggression.
Absolutely, absolutely. Great point.
Okay. All Muslims are.
Victoria, I would totally agree. Sorry, she just.
You're good.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree. That's exactly right. And that's good for you for thinking about that and realizing, right, that's the way the media works, right? If we just take in, right, this information uncritically, we might believe anything that we're fed, and there's a reason for that, right? I mean, there's a way that they want to trump up, pun intended. They want to trump up, right, these these misconceptions, these ideas that might get people riled, right? Anyhow, go ahead.
All right, so our second question was, all Muslims are Arabs. Good job, guys, 100%. So Arabs make up a minority of Muslims, and they only make up about 15% of the Muslim population in the world. East Asia has the most Muslims in the world, with 69% in Africa, or with 69%, sorry, and Africa has 27%, coming in second. The term jihad simply means to struggle or struggle. Dr. Rawson, I feel like we need to cover our faces when the answers come
I
up.
know.
I feel like we give them away.
But the other thing is that people can totally like Google stuff. I just realized that, right? Like, I mean, you can quickly just be like, I mean, not that you care that much about this, right? Nobody's getting a grade for it. This is good, right? I mean, go ahead, you go. Yep.
Good. So the answer is true. To a jihad, it just means it refers to an internal struggle to be a better Muslim, the struggle between good and evil.
I think Victoria's making a great point, right? Is that often in Islam, most often, right, the way that it's used is in reference to one's spiritual struggle, right? And I think that's really important to know that, again, a word that's taken out of context all the time, right? And what amazes me too is, right, that often texts from the Quran are lifted up as being violent or in some way promoting war, when they're actually often taken out of context, misinterpreted. And the truth is, the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, has far more mentions of war and violence and destruction and genocide, really. And so it amazes me the way that people textually approach, again, right, just according to their own story in order to justify, right, their particular agenda, or to make themselves seem better, and then to make someone else, right, us, and then make someone else into the enemy. Go ahead.
All right. The hadith were written down before the Prophet Muhammad's death, peace be upon him. Okay, so the answer is true. It was written down. They were written down after the Prophet's death. And again, hadith is the source of religious law and moral guidance and ranks second to the Quran, which is, again, it's what the Prophet reveals to us. Yeah, I lost my train of thought. So true or false, the Quran is only read in Arabic. Good job. So the answer is false. Way to go, everyone. Since only about 20% of the Muslims are Arabs, the Quran has been translated into and is read in many other languages with multiple English translations. But because Muslims consider the original Arabic text to be the literal word of God, during ritual prayers, the Quran is recited in its original Arabic language. Just like today, you will still see Catholic churches performing Mass in Latin or synagogues performing prayers in Hebrew. And it's also important to remember how Dr. Rawson mentioned earlier, how words can be translated and have totally different meanings when they're translated from the original language. And so even though there are multiple different versions, or not versions, but translations now, a lot of Muslims will still learn enough Arabic to read the Quran in the original language. True or false? Do all Muslim women wear hijab? I feel like I need to turn my camera off. Which doesn't help because my picture's on there.
But also as if no one has been seeing you this entire time. Like, I love that you think that in that split second, it's gonna fool everybody.
And then my picture comes up too anyway.
Yeah, exactly, all right.
All right, good job. Answer's false. The Quran instructs both men and women to be modest, so many Muslim women will follow the normative ruling that the dress code for women in public includes covering everything except their face and their hands. Majority of Muslims in diverse countries believe that women should be free to choose whether or not to wear hijab. And I think that I am an obvious representation of this because I'm not wearing one right now. Multiple family members of mine do wear it, but I am not ready for it right now. So I'm not wearing it.
Are you going to speak to this a little bit more about misconceptions around the hijab?
Yes, so I'll talk about it now. Thanks. So I know that I'm going to talk just, so I know that the biggest misconception is that women are forced. And obviously we just talked about how not all Muslims wear the hijab. So that obviously crushes that. And I mean, if I'm talking, just chill with you guys, right? And so I think many people feel like, what they see in the media about like Saudi Arabia or Iran, they think that's true for all Muslim countries, when in reality, those are the only two countries that require women to wear a hijab. And it really comes down to personal choice and the way that you interpret it and your relationship with God. That's what it comes down to. It's what you, when you're ready and what you think you need to do. It's not about what someone else is going to tell you to do.
And I think important too, Rania, if you don't mind me jumping in really quick, right? Well, no, I mean, there's a way in which it's done out of a sense of self-respect and dignity, right? A woman not wanting to be sexualized by a man. And so having a desire to keep herself covered so that she's not ogled, right? And so in that sense, right, as much as we with, being Americans, right, and having gone through these waves of feminism, right, think that a woman couldn't possibly be liberated if she's still wearing a head covering, right? This is another way in which we have to get more information, right? And in speaking to actual Muslim women, right, what we find and what I've found in my experience, right, is that it's in fact about a woman having agency, right? And it's for her a very liberating and empowering move to be able to say, I do not want to be looked at in that way, right? I don't want to be disrespected. I want to maintain my modesty as an act, again, of dignity and self-respect. So important to know, right? That perspective.
And then there's also, like I don't wear the hijab, but there's other ways that a lot of Muslim women follow this idea of modesty. Like for me, because I'm putting myself on display here for you guys, I don't wear like ripped jeans. I don't wear shorts. I don't, there's certain things that like my peers will do that I'm not doing and I don't ever plan on doing because I don't consider it modest for what I want for myself and my body. Just like you said, like that's not something I'm comfortable with and that's not something I want to do. When I think of modesty, that's what I think of. I need to wear, I'll wear skinny jeans, but they're not going to be like ultra tight, skinny, like stuck everywhere. Like that's not what I'm looking for, because that's not like what I consider modest. So it just comes down to, who you're talking to and what they want to do. Okay. Next, true or false? Allah is only the God of Islam. Looking away. Can't see your responses.
I feel like I have a sneaky smile, so nobody really knows what I'm thinking, right? I'm like,
You're right. We done? Okay. I'm gonna go with those answers. The 63% of you who said false, congratulations, you're right. Allah is the Arabic word for God, and this is the same God in Christianity and Judaism, the God of Abraham. Muslims, Christians, and Jews, as we stated earlier, are all part of the Abrahamic lineage. But Jews and Christians would follow Isaac's lineage, and Muslims follow Ishmael's lineage. But both of them are brothers and the sons of Abraham, as Dr. Rawson took us through earlier.
I think it's important, right, to think about this. This is huge. I mean, you know, you think about in different languages, right? I mean, there are different words. There are just going to be different words for God. You know, I mean, just like there are different words for sun, and there are different words for water, and different words for tree, right? And so this idea of a monotheistic God, right, is something that is shared in these faiths. I mean, it is the same God, the same, you know, ancestor, patriarch, right? I mean, what happened in this story, I mean, let me say this really quick, because I remember that I actually didn't even say this, is that in the biblical account, Hagar and Ishmael, ironically, are kicked out of the family. Hagar's name means the immigrant. So here you've got Abraham and Sarah, who are called immigrants themselves, right, are coming into a land that is not their own. And the very woman that is a part of their household, who has Abraham's first son, they kick out, they cast out, right? And so because the story is told in this way, right, and I'm thinking now with Chimamanda Adichie, right, we can't just, there's not one story. The danger of a single story is that we don't realize that there are 3 or 4 or 5 different perspectives, right? If we have 3 or 4 or 5 different people that are interpreting. And so because we've got then, right, just the biblical account as Christians, we miss out on hearing the whole other side of the family, right? That actually is a part of the family. We don't just kick them out, right? Same God, same family.
All right, majority of the Muslims in the world are located in A, Indonesia, B, Tunisia, C, the US, or D, Saudi Arabia.
Janelle, I love that I can see your face. I'm so happy that you're not just the screen with, you know, without the camera.
I try to show my face, you know, for y'all, just for y'all.
All right, so I'm sorry to say this, but the 44% of you that picked D are wrong. And so are the 19% of you that picked the US. The correct answer was A, Indonesia. So South Asia, as I mentioned earlier, has the largest population of Muslims in the world. And with the whole population of the world, 24% of it is made up of Muslims, right? And Indonesia holds 13% of the world's Muslims. And as I stated earlier, with Africa holding the second largest amount of Muslims, 15% of Muslims live in sub-Saharan Africa. And then Islam is the second largest religion in Western Europe after Christianity.
Ronnie, before you go, just one quick thing. You guys, I was a minister for 8 years. And after I was in college, I actually moved to Southeast Asia, right? And Ronnie was just explaining to you about the predominance of Islam there. And it's interesting because I went as a missionary, right? So in the Christian church, right? I went to go and share the gospel and to help, right? To evangelize and to save people. And interestingly, while I was there, right, I was exposed to a lot of different Muslims, right? In fact, I had some really good friends that were Muslim, and I started to realize they don't need saving, right? I mean, this is when my idea of God, you know, as just the God of Christianity was shattered, right? It was exploded. And so my God concept got so much bigger, right? When I started to put these things together and study the Bible more, and also be in conversation with, again, real live Muslims. And so that's really when I think, for me, everything started to shift. And I realized, right, the Muslims that I knew were actually better Christians than the Christians that I knew. Like, wait, Rawson, what do you mean by that? Like, they were more Christ-like than a lot of the Christians that I knew who, you know, I was just seeing a lot of judgment and shame in the church, and I wasn't experiencing that same thing from my Muslim friends. That was a real eye-opener. Yeah, anyhow.
All right. True or false? Forced marriage is allowed in Islam. Oh, wow, you guys shocked me there. I wasn't even looking at the numbers. Dang, guys. I had a little faith in you guys. We talked about this. The answer is false. There's a line in the Quran, it says, "O you who believe, it is not lawful for you to inherit the woman by forcibly or unwillingly. So marriage is supposed to be done by mutual agreement." This is one of the biggest misconceptions because of the role of the media. When you see things like forced marriage, it's not religious, it's not Islam, it's not what the text says. You have to look at the context of where it's coming from, what culture are they in, what country are they in. It's not the Quran.
And this is right, getting back to how like structural and how systemic Islamophobia is and misconceptions about Islam, right? That the media is spinning these kind of myths, right? Lies, and sending these images, right? That our brains immediately just take in and assume to be true, right? This is why we always need to watch and read critically, right? So also, Rania, I just want to say it sounded a heck of a lot like me right there. You were like, come on, you guys, don't you know? That was awesome. You felt like a professor for a second, I'm sure. Come on, we went over this. Anyway.
All right. Islam and science are not compatible. True or false? Way to go. You redeemed yourselves. All right, so false. It is commonly thought that religion in general, including Islam, is simply not compatible with science, reason, or knowledge. The Quran repeatedly emphasizes the importance of seeking knowledge and verifying information, use of logic, evidence, consultation, reflection, and promotes biology, creation, archaeology, history, and sciences. If you even go to like the Charlotte Mosque and you speak to the imam, if you have a question, they're going to tell you, go talk to that expert, go talk to the experts in that field. Make sure that you're getting all the knowledge you can on that topic. Oh, I think this next question is about to be a fun one. Muslims do not believe in Jesus. True or false? And I'm really not looking now. Is it safe for me to look again? I'm scared. Good job. The answer's false. Way to go, everyone. Muslims do believe in Jesus. In Islam, Jesus is seen as a highly respected prophet. Jesus is seen as the son of Mary, not seen as the son of God. And in Arabic, Jesus' name is Isa.
This is actually really important too, right? Because you guys, this is huge. We got to think about this, especially when we're thinking about monotheism, right? So monotheism, right? One God, mono, one theism, theo, right? God. So in monotheism, where you believe in one God, right? There's a way in which in Judaism and in Islam, right? They struggle with the move that was actually, it was post-biblical, right? In fact, it was the church fathers, the Catholic church fathers, that made a decision about Jesus being co-equivalent, being equal to God. So that was a later decision that was made, but it's not evident or present in the Bible. Jesus never said, "I am God," right? So I and the Father are one is often interpreted like that. Totally different conversation. Message me and we can talk about what was going on there, what Jesus was talking about, right? The idea of having oneness with divinity has been in many, many religions, right? The idea of the God nature within, anyhow, whole different conversation. So for Jews and for Muslims, Christianity, right? The idea that Jesus would be God is actually blasphemous, right? So there's a belief in Jesus, right, as a great prophet, right? Definitely sent by God, but to say that Jesus is God for a Muslim would actually be sacrilege, right? It would be defamation. It would be saying that there is not one God, that a human could be God. Again, so this is a much larger conversation, but just to be clear, that's the reason, right? The belief in Jesus, there, just can't say he's God, because then that's sacrilegious, right? That's blasphemy.
All right, true or false? There are more terrorist attacks targeting Muslims than performed by Muslims. Way to go. True. So in May of 2019, there were over 500 reported anti-Muslim attacks in the United States alone. And then, as we stated earlier, in March, 2 years ago, we had the Christchurch, New Zealand attack, where 51 people were killed during the Friday prayer. And even before that, the day before the attack in New Zealand, there was an explosion in Somalia in the capital, killing 8 people and injuring many more.
You know, I want to talk to this one, but I'm cognizant of time. How many more questions do we have?
I'm not sure, but we're gonna keep it rolling for now.
Keep rolling.
Yeah, and then if we have time, we'll go back. Can women initiate a divorce? True or false? Good job. The answer is true. While the Quran describes situations where women can't initiate a divorce, the ease at which she can do so is often informed by interpretations or practices of Islam that vary depending on country. The same thing as the hijab. It depends on who you're talking to and the interpretation. And so in some Muslim majority countries, actually, a woman can get a divorce relatively easily, while other countries it is much more difficult. All right. Where is the Kaaba located? And the Kaaba, if you don't know, is the building is a sacred building to Muslims. And it's, I'm not gonna tell you where it's located, and we'll sub that. And it's where Muslims go to have their pilgrimage. Good job. The answer was Mecca. Jerusalem, letter B, is also a holy city for Muslims, just as it is for Christianity and Judaism. And that's where one of the holiest mosques is also located. Were there any female prophets, true or false? Good job. Answer is true. So while most Muslim theologians historically consider all prophets to have been men, some do hold the view that there were female prophets, especially in view of the fact that only 24 of the 124,000 prophets are identified in the Quran. And 4 of the women regarded by these scholars as prophets are Eve, the first female created by God, the mother of Moses, who is not named in the Quran, Asiya, the wife of the Pharaoh, who in the Quran is the one who adopts Moses as her son, as opposed to the daughter of the Pharaoh who does so in the Bible, and Mary, the mother of Jesus, because they all received direct divine revelation. In either case, Muslims revert to them as among many of the righteous and saintly women to be mentioned in the Quran. Can Muslims display any images of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, yes or no? Good job. So the answer was no. The general consensus among Muslim scholars, or among scholars in general, is that the physical representations of the prophet are discouraged on the grounds that since prophets are exemplars, they should not be presented in a manner that is either disrespectful or might lead to adultery or idolatry. Sorry. However, one can find representations of the prophet and other prophets in different periods of Islamic history, mainly in the form of manuscript illustrations, in which the prophet's face would be obscured by light. And then I'm going to skip because I want to be cognizant of time to the last question. Okay. Islam is a religion of peace and submission to God. True or false? All right, way to go, everyone. Yes, so as I stated earlier, Islam literally translates into the submission to the will of God, and the word Islam is derived from the Arabic word salam, which literally means peace. Okay. So now I wanted to open it up to any questions you guys might have or comments.
I had a question, Rania.
What's up?
So when there's a divorce for an Islamic couple, are there like repercussions the same way there would be for like a Catholic couple, or is it less? You know what I'm talking about?
So I get what you're asking, but I don't know what repercussions are in the Catholic Church for a divorce.
I know for
so
the Catholic Church, I know for the Catholic Church, like if you were to remarry, you can't remarry in a Catholic church. And I don't think you get like excommunicated from the church, but I know you can't like remarry in the Catholic Church.
No. But you also, Janelle, so within Catholicism, you have to get an annulment. In other words, you have to void the previous relationship if you want to marry again. So it just has to be as if that marriage never ever happened, and a lot of people don't want to go through that process, right? Because they have kids with this person, and right. But it is it's a long involved process to get an annulment.
But to answer your question about in Islam, you can remarry. You can even remarry your ex-husband if you guys wanted to get back together. You can remarry. Does anyone else have any questions? You can put them in the chat if you don't want to unmute.
Ronnie, was there anything else that you wanted to touch upon? since we don't have any questions and we have a couple minutes left.
I do actually have a couple of announcements. So unless we get some questions, I'll go ahead and do those. So the first main big announcement that I have for everyone tonight is to save the date. On Tuesday, April 6th at 6 p.m., we'll be having Dr. Suzanne Barakat. Dr. Barakat is the sister of the 3 Muslim students who were killed in Chapel Hill. She'll be speaking at Wingate. The lyceum is Islamophobia killed my brother. She spoke here a couple years ago, and faculty, staff, and former students have all been asking for her to come back, and we were able to get her this year and this semester. So save that date. It'll be an amazing lyceum. You don't want to miss it. Also in the chat, I'm gonna drop this link, or that's not the link. Let me drop the link. Sorry. So this link is for the bias incident report form. So if you ever have any experiences on campus that you need to report, that's the link that you want to use. And it'll go directly to the bias action team, and you can do it anonymously. You can put your name on if you want to meet with them and talk through it so that further action can be done. Dr. Rawson, I don't know if you want to talk about it because you're on the bias action team, but I wanted to give that to everyone here tonight. Sorry.
I mean, I think just, no, I think Rania earlier said, right, there doesn't need to be a Muslim in the space. If you hear a comment that's Islamophobic, right, and you can even, you can email me, you can reach out, right, there are a handful of us, Dr. Antonio Jefferson, Dr. April Smith, Marta Falcone, right, Candy LePan, Nana Wolf Hill, and Coach Kirkland, right, are all members. So you can reach out to us if you have a question. But I would say, if you have any doubt or any question, right, go ahead and fill out the form. It can be totally anonymous, right? Even if you just witnessed something, it's important that we find out about that so we can really shift the culture and ethos here at the school, right? And be more conscientious of difference and really the beauty of the diversity here at Wingate, and to honor people's experiences, right? Because that's what makes this world a radical, wonderful place to live, right? Is that we're not all the same. Thank God, or thank Allah, right? Okay, I just said that anyway. All right, Rania.
So if no one has any questions right now, I did want to, I'm going to put my email in the chat for you guys. If anyone wants to reach out to me or the other Muslim students on the executive board, you guys can reach out to us and we can help answer any questions. If you want to learn more, just reach out to us. If anyone wants to join the MSA and get a cool t-shirt, we're selling those right now. And we'll actually be holding a MSA retreat with the CCG on the alien retreat. If anyone is interested, just reach out and let me know and we can set that up. But that's all I have right now. If you want to see another Lyceum with me and Dr. Rawson, I'm going to do a little promotion. Come to Courageous Conversations next week on Wednesday. We'll be talking about women in the workplace.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
And I think they just dropped the Lyceum form for you guys.